it's a weird movie. One thing I love about Tusk is anybody can say anything they want about it, like to my face, and I'm always like, yeah, like, you know. It's the movie that I could understand. And when people come up to me and they're like, that's the best movie I've ever seen, I'm like, isn't it? And then when people come up to me and be like, that's the worst piece of shit you've ever made, I'm like, isn't it? It works both ways, you know. For some people, it'll work like religion. For some people, they're like, that doesn't make sense. It's fucking stupid. And it is. Everyone's fucking right. It was a stupid fucking dopey idea that I was like, let's just see if we can flesh it out. For those that don't know the story, you heard at the end of the movie, the podcast. Me and Mosier sitting there chatting to each other. That's where it was born. Tusk was born Smodcast 259. And we were just sitting around talking about this ad that we read online by a motherfucker who was like, I'll give you a room in my house if for 2 hours every day you dress up like a walrus. And I will throw you fish and crabs and you can't fucking speak. You gotta make the sounds of a walrus. They're available online if you don't know them. It was real fucking clear and distinct, man. And it was for a website called Gumtree.uk. It was like a Craigslist website in the UK, in Brighton, England and shit. So we talked about it on the podcast, and I think this fucking dude, you show up, he's gonna fucking knock you out, sew you into the suit like you're a human fucking centipede, you beat a human walrus. And so me and Mosier start making up like a goofy fucking movie, essentially a movie that you saw, just going, oh man, wouldn't that be badass? Oh, this. And at a certain point I'm like, all right, copyright Kevin Scott, because I love this idea. You hear me fall in love with the fucking idea during the podcast, bless you. I sit there going like, I want to see this fucking movie. Like, I work myself up into a frenzy about seeing it. I get angry that it doesn't exist. I'm like, where are all the brave filmmakers who will make this fucking walrus man movie, you know? Nobody's got any balls anymore. And then I remember I used to be a fucking brave filmmaker. And I was like, holy shit, man, maybe I can do it. So you can hear what I call like this mind snap, like in that podcast. Nice. I loved having a microphone on that podcast because you rarely record the moment of inspiration. It's rarely a record of it. Usually you're sitting in the shower or something like that, and you're like, holy fuck, you get a good idea, and it goes from there. But nobody ever, like, records it. Maybe they write it down or something. We had a microphone rolling on us when it happened and shit. So, like, number one, I just love the conversation. This is one of my favorite podcasts we ever did. And number two, I was just like, oh my God, there's an oral record. I can hear this whole thing. And at the end of the show, I was like, wow, I could just listen to this forever. Or I can actually try to pursue it. And you hear the mind snap during the show, man. It reminded me of fucking something that happened that kick-started my career. I always used to love comedies in a big bad way. And I always wanted to see comedies where my friends and our sense of humor was kind of represented. Like, as much as I loved Animal House, like, I never identified with fucking Belushi's Bluto because I couldn't drink a shot of fucking Jack Daniels, let alone a whole bottle and shit like that. I love the John Hughes movies, but all those kids were rich. I remember watching those movies going like, they're rich. What are they bitching about? Like, they've all got fucking money. This one just wants to go to the prom? Fuck these kids. Like, so there was never a sense of humor like my friends and the shit we talked about. I always would be like, how come nobody talks about Star Wars and pussy in the movies, you know? The two things we sit around and talk about all the time. And I would lament that. Like, how come nobody ever talks about the shit we talk about? And then one day it fucking occurred to me, man. I had a total fucking mind snap where it was like, Kevin, nobody is ever going to make a movie about the shit that you find funny or the shit you and your friends talk about. Because nobody knows who the fuck you and your friends are. And even if they did, why would they, man? Like, fucking, if you want to see a movie about the shit you and your friends find funny, you got to make it yourself. And so I was like, all right, and I did, and it was Clerks, and that worked out. So here I was like 20 years later with that fucking podcast episode, and I was like, man, I want to see this fucking walrus movie. Like, who the fuck, like, I could set it up, and I was sitting there as we were talking, I'm like, there's all the story points, somebody could go make it and shit. And then I had that fucking snap, man, because I was desperate. I was like, fuck, how come I can't watch this? I would love to watch this movie. And then I realized I had the snap. It's like, Kevin, nobody is ever going to make a movie about a guy who turns another guy into a walrus. Like, you can wait your whole life, it's not going to fucking happen. If you want to see that movie, you got to fucking make it yourself. And because of the Clerks thing, I was like, oh, fuck it. Like, yeah, I used to do that sort of thing, so I'll go for it. So in the podcast, you know, and you heard it in the credits, I think, talk about hashtag walrus yes, and people like the idea. At the end of the podcast is, I want to fucking pursue this as a fucking movie. Anybody think this is a good idea? Hashtag walrus yes. If you think it's stupid, hashtag walrus no. And of course, we all agreed it was stupid, but if you think it was stupid to pursue this fucking movie, walrus no. The next day, there was a sea of walrus yes. There was one walrus no. And there was a guy who wrote, I'm only doing it to support the democratic process. So I was like, I felt encouraged. I was like, the internet thinks I have a good idea. Which is like ridiculous, man. You should never listen to the internet when they encourage you, because the internet is like your friend at a party when you're fucking drunk and you're like, I want to take my fucking cock out. And they're like, do it. Fucking amazing. Send. You know. So that kind of encouragement, maybe not the most positive, but that was enough. That's all I needed, man. A little pat on the back. I was like, fuck, I got the free time. And the whole thing was never about some like Chautauqua of like, I'm gonna make this fucking movie by hook or by crook, man. It was all push and whimsy. Because I was out of the movie business, right? I'd stepped away, burnt my career down, went on the stage at Sundance 2011. I was like, so long and thanks for all the fucking fish. So at that point, nobody wanted to work with me, and I wasn't interested in making movies anyway. We were doing the TV show, the podcast and stuff. But then suddenly I was like, ooh, I would like to fucking make this movie. I'm gonna try this. So I couldn't like sit there. Here's the thing. This is what fucking did it for me, man. It's a bunch of factors. One, I wanted to see Michael Parks fucking play a role, had no religion and no fucking politics in it, just the batshit crazy. Like, take his Red State performance, take out the politics and the religion, and then just watch him fucking chew the scenery and shit. That was part of it. The other part of it, big part of it, man, was when we put up that podcast, there were some cats on Twitter and Facebook who had this reaction, which fucking blew my hair back. They're like, is that allowed? I just listened to you guys sit there and talk about 6 other movies and make a movie up as we were listening. And now you say you're going to go make it. And all you did to create your third act was say, oh, let's do what they did in Iron Man when Jeff Bridges comes out in a bigger suit. And I guarantee you, not once when you were watching this movie were you like, oh, they stole the Iron Man. But you would have been justified in saying that. We absolutely did. If you listen to the podcast, I'm like, oh, we'll do it like Jeff Bridges and Iron Man. The suit's just bigger and they fight. That's how it turned out. So, you know, at that point, there were people going like, is that allowed? That's what fucking killed me. One comment says, is that allowed? Is that against the rules? And you're like, holy shit, there are no rules. This is art, man. Like, you consume other people's art, and you spit out your fucking own art and stuff. And, you know, you don't have to fucking wholesale rip somebody off. You can be inspired by it and stuff like that. A la Iron Man and the ending of fucking Tusk. So, you know, for me, I was like, holy shit. Like, that made me sad, because my audience gives me everything. Like, I've been allowed for 21 years now to, like, walk around, make shit up, good or bad, fucking dress like an asshole and whatnot. All because of you cats. All because you go to the movies, or you come to the Q&As, or watch TV shows, whatever the fuck. So I always try to pay back as much as I can. Like, all the podcasts are fucking free, and I honestly feel that's the best thing I do. The movies are cute, but the fucking podcasts are phenomenal, man. They take up a lot of fucking time. There's hours and hours of them, and it's all fucking free. Some shit like movies or the Q&As, you gotta fucking, you know, you rent a space, so you gotta presume upon the friendship of your audience and be like, can you pay me for this? And I hate that shit. That's why I like giving out the podcast for free and stuff. But that's only covers some people. Like, some people are like, look, I like you and what you do, and thank you for the free fucking podcast, but what I want to know is how to do what you're doing. Like, whether it be a film or just fucking how you do whatever the fuck you want to do. I got dreams. I want to do shit. How do I take the first step? And that broke my heart. The idea that some people, like, don't know how to get started. I'm a phenomenal self-starter because I've been a lifelong masturbator. So I know how to get an activity going and shit. Some people are like, I want to make my miracle happen, but what's the first fucking step? Where do I walk toward? What do I fucking do? So in that moment, I was like, holy shit, man, this would be interesting. I'm in a rarefied position. I used to make movies and shit, but now I haven't made movies in years, and they don't want me to make movies anymore and shit. So I can show these cats who are like, how do I make my thing happen? That anybody can do this from the ground up, man. I can take the fucking stupidest idea on the planet, and if I can make this into a movie, there's no excuse for anybody else to not be able to do their fucking shit, right? So I said, let me try it. Let me give it a shot. The hashtag Walrus Yes thing, fucking, let me see what happens. A lot of Walrus Yes, and I was like, all right, fucking, I'll push whimsy. So the idea was every day I'd work on a little bit, write a few pages and shit like that. If I got bored, I'd fucking kick off. If I showed it to somebody and they're like, this is fucking dumb, I'd be like, yeah, if anyone had ever discouraged me at any step of the way, been responsible enough to be like, Kevin, stop it, you know. I would have been like, oh my God, you're right. Why the fuck would I make that? It's a movie about a guy who turns another guy into a walrus. But instead, it did the opposite. It captured people's imaginations. Everybody was just like, I want to see how that happens. You know, the fucking people that wind up financing the movie. Because I was going to pay for it myself. My wife, Jennifer, love her to death. She loves me. She's not really a big Kevin Smith fan. She's a fan of the person, but she doesn't really like the movies and shit. Or the work in general. Case in point, fucking comic book men. is a show that like I'm on when the walking. But it's on, 8 times in the fucking fall and then 8 times in spring. 16 episodes a year. Her husband, the man she fucks, is on a television, and she never watches the show. Ever, ever, ever. And I was like, it used to be in the beginning, why don't you watch the show? She's like, I've heard you talk so much, Kevin. She's like, what am I going to turn on the TV and watch you talk wearing a hockey jersey? You're standing right here doing the same thing. And one day I was just like, hey man, like we got in a fight, and I was like, well, you don't even watch fucking comic book, man. I got heated. And she was like, well, I'm not really in your demographic, am I? And I was like, if the woman married to Kevin Smith is not in the Kevin Smith demographic, who the fuck is, man? So she's not the world's biggest fan, but Tusk, she read the first few pages and she really liked it. She's like, what is this? And I was like, I don't know. It's this thing that I was fucking talking about in Mosier. I'm going to write it as a movie. She's like, it's fucking weird. Where's it going? I was like, I don't know. Well, I kind of know, but you don't want to know. And she's like, finish it. Like, she's a big reader, and she just read a book and finished the book. So she's like, I got nothing to read. Finish it. I was like, all right. So I finished the script, pushed whimsy a little bit and shit. She read the script. She was like, I love this. I think you should make this fucking movie. I was like, yeah? She's like, yeah, man, we can put the house up. And I was like, really? We can second mortgage the house and shit? The movie was only $2.7 million, low budget flick, right? To make a $2.7 million movie, you don't need $2.7 million. You need about $300,000 in equity. The rest of it is kind of debt financing, and the other part of it is usually foreign sales, at least in my area of the world. So, this is something I never really had to do for myself. Other companies do it, but now that I'm a hardcore independent filmmaker, I was blown away by the notion of like, wait a second, you can make a fucking $2.7 million movie for $300,000? This is fucking nuts. How much did Star Wars cost? And they're like, $1.99. It's fucking crazy. So, I was like, all right, well, all we have to do is fucking put up the house. My house is a pretty nice house in Los Angeles. But if we put it up, we can get fucking $300,000, fucking put it into the movie and shit. And the wife was into it. She was like, do it, let's do it. And I honestly think it's because I hadn't made a movie in like 3 years. And she married a filmmaker and then wound up with a podcaster. And, filmmakers are sexy, and podcasting is, fucking everybody could do that. So she used to live in a world where she's like, hey, there's Ben Affleck, hey, there's fucking Elizabeth Banks. And then she's in a world now where like, there's Jason Mewes and Ralph Garman. So, movies are the sexy, I understand. And she missed fucking us making movies and shit. So the fact that I was showing any interest in making a movie, I think made her go like, oh, fucking do it, And so she was supporting Tusk. So I was looking into financing. It's putting our house up and getting some loot and fucking making the movie. Shannon McIntosh, one of the producers, had given the script to this company called Demarest. And those two dudes came over to my house, Sam Engelbart and David Greathouse, with the script and shit. And after the initial chit-chat, Sam Engelbart's tapping the script going, are you fucking serious with this? I said, yeah, I know it's a little bad shit, man. It's absurd, but like, yeah, I think it'd be fucking cool, man. And he's like, you've got money for this? I was like, yeah, we're going to put the house up. I know, it's probably not smart, but like, many years ago, I bet on myself with credit cards and shit, and it worked out, and I've never been able to do it since because other people have paid for the movies, and I think it'd be fucking cool to like bet on myself like years later and shit like that. And the dude's like, well, what kind of money are you talking about? I was like, it's $2.7 million. He's like, well, we've got fucking finishing funds in our account at the end of the year. We don't even have to go to debt financing. We finance the whole thing right out of it. I got a slush fund of $3 million. If you think you could fucking make this happen, I'm in. And I said, why? Why the fuck would you finance this movie? And the dude was like, literally, it was this simple. He goes, I just want to see if you could do it. And I was like, really? He's going, yeah, it's fucking weird, man. I just want to see if you can pull it off. He's like, even if everything goes wrong, we'll have something to talk about for the rest of our lives. I was like, right on, man. So we had financing, we went off, and we're starting.